Hello, and welcome to Drop the Act, brought to you by Performing Perfectly. I'm Chris Key, and today I'm chatting to Mark O'Brien, ex-professional footballer and author of the book A Game of Two Hearts. And he has a fascinating story to tell. Keep listening. Afternoon, Mark. Great to see you. How are you?
Good afternoon. No, I'm grand. All good with me. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. It's been quite a while since we last met a few years ago, and I know a lot's happened since then. But you have a fascinating story, a fascinating journey as a footballer, and certain events that happened during your career, and I know your journey is continuing now into a new direction. But let's go right back to the beginning and talk about life as a 16-year-old footballer, because that was when you made your breakthrough and your upheaval from moving from Ireland over to Derby. What was that like when you first, at 16 years old, to suddenly find yourself leaving home and starting off a career as a professional footballer?
It was really tough at the beginning, but I think the love that I had for football, it could have been halfway around the world that I moved, and I don't really think I would have batted an eyelid. I think moving away to do something that I loved and something that I was passionate about, I think, as sad as it was leaving my family, I think I was more excited just to know that I get to play football every single day. So once that decision came to move away to Derby and get the opportunity of going away, it was an opportunity that I was just never going to turn down. And as I say, like, the year that I had in that first year of moving away just went from strength to strength to strength, which was literally, I played in a local park the summer previous. And then in that summer, when I went from the under 16s to the under 18s to the reserve team, all the way to the senior team and making my first team debut at the age of 16, I was playing in front of 23,000 people at Vicarage Road. And that in itself was just, it kind of cemented the whole decision of moving away. And I know it's not a normal thing for a 16-year-old to be playing in a men's senior team, but at the same time, it all just felt so natural to me. And it wasn't something that I was fazed by, because off the field, I was this quiet 16-year-old, but you get me on a field and I would have spoken and shouted at anybody and kicked anybody again. Robbie Savage was the club captain at the time. But when we were on a field together, we were teammates. But off the field, I wouldn't speak a word to him. I was like too nervous to speak. So, but that whole experience and that first year really cemented the idea of, this is exactly what I want. Like, I made the right decision.
It's funny, you just touched on something that I was going to sort of bring up later, which I remember when we spoke, you made a comment to me about, when you crossed that white line, stepping onto the football pitch, how you sort of became a different person. And we linked that to performance when we were working together and what you're doing more of now, which we'll come to later. But, how important was mindset, at that age, at 16, and to perform and to sort of embody a different persona every time you stepped onto the pitch? How did you manage that as a 16-year-old?
Again, it goes back to the passion, what I was doing it for. It was going back to the love that I had for football along that way, that nobody was going to stand in my way for it. So once I knew football, and this was my kind of, as you'd call it, bread and butter, this was my like simple thing to go out and do what I love. So once I went out there, everyone was on an equal playing field to myself. So I never seen myself as the young 16-year-old. Once I was out there, I was the teammate of, again, a Robbie Savage, a Sean Barrett, and all these first team players who were there. So going out there, I think I never felt pressure. I felt more excitement. If anything, the only pressure that I felt would be the pressure I used to put on myself, thinking I have to perform. But that pressure just sparked a little bit of that fire inside of me that kind of brought out the best of me. Because I think if I had gone out there just in pure relaxation and just thought, well, I'm doing what I love, I don't think that would have taken me through. I think the added little bit of pressure at that time allowed me to kind of create that little alter ego that I always had for myself, that off the field, people wouldn't think that I would even want to be a defender at the time. Like, you wouldn't want to tackle somebody. You wouldn't want to get near somebody. He's never going to make it. But then you put me on a field and I was like this person that would jump into any tackle. I would put my head anywhere, and literally I was in my comfort zone. My comfort zone was the pressured arena at that time.
And, you know, with performing perfectly, there's a number of things I want to discuss today. The whole idea of communication we'll come to later, but leadership is certainly a massive part of what we do and what we talk about. You know, you've mentioned Robbie Savage, and I know that that Nigel Clough as well was manager at the time. So, you know, some big names there. What were their leadership styles? How much did you need them as leaders to help you on the pitch, and in what way did they do that?
I think Nigel Clough as a manager is somebody that I owe my life to, really. I think because of him, through certain circumstances that I went through, he gave me a career. He gave me the opportunity at the age of 16 as that kind of gateway that he opened up the door for me, and he believed in me and gave me that chance. And again, he kept everything so simple for me. When I was coming onto a pitch at the age of 16, as I said, they go from a local park to a stadium with 23,000. All he said to me was, kick the ball, head the ball, be a defender. And it made me feel so relaxed because I thought, well, I'm good at that. That's what I'm going to go do. And it was almost like he just showed a lot of belief, even if there was mistakes along the way, and even if there were things that didn't go quite right, he still kept believing, even though he'd probably be harder on you for it. And he would be really hard on you. But it was more the fact of, well, the reason he's hard on you is because he knows you can be better. He knows that he expects more. He knows that you can produce. It's the moment, and I got taught this, it's the moment he doesn't speak to you is the moment you want to be worried. Yeah. Because if he doesn't talk to you, it means that he has no hope for you, or he doesn't believe you can perform to what he's asking. And again, on the field, Robbie Savage, for me being 16 and growing up in Ireland, you're watching him on Match of the Day every week. You're watching him live on telly, and you're watching all these games. And then all of a sudden, he's a teammate. And when I went out and made my debut, from the forced header to the forced tackle to clearing one off the line, he was the first person to come over to me, put an arm around me and say, well done, keep going. And it made you feel that little bit walk with your chest out moment, like 10 feet tall. And then after the game, again, the more leadership that he showed was, I knew my mum and dad were at the game, and he walks me around and wanted me to point them out in the crowd, and he walks over, shakes their hands, waves to them in the crowd, and walks me around with his arm around my shoulder. So he was someone who introduced me into that level of what I believe in football now, is just treating people as a human. And I think that's what Nigel Clough had as a manager. His man management was, every person to him was treated as an individual. They weren't treated as another pawn in the game of football. And I think that's what really brought out the best of me and made me want to play for this type of manager, because he made you feel special, even if it was the smallest of comments to the smallest of gestures for different things that he done for me, that it made a massive impact to me.
So 16 years old, playing for Derby County in the Championship, in front of 23,000 odd people, you know, the footballing world at your feet. You'd also played for Republic of Ireland, I think, under 16s, under 18s. So your career's going from strength to strength. And then there was a massive turning point which really has sort of directed your life since that moment. If you want to talk us through that and what happened that day.
Well, yeah, after making my debut, went home to Ireland. Everything was brilliant, getting all the pats on the back and all the family and everybody excited for me. So all I had was me itching to get back over to England once the off-season break was done. And once I got myself back to Derby, started pre-season training. But because I was 16, I was able to register as a full-time scholar in the academy. So once I ended up doing that, you have to get your medical screenings and you have to get your heart scans and all these different types of things. And the doctor came into the training ground and was doing the heart screenings. So I walked into the physio room, and just like everybody else, you just expect the scan of your heart, all clear, walk out. And I remember I went in, done my ECG, done an echocardiogram. And after doing that, I remember the doctor walked out into the physio room, brought the physio back in and shut the door. So we kind of sat there, and the doctor explained, said, Mark, we found an abnormality in your heart. He said, you've got a leak in aortic valve. But he said, the difference with your one is, he said, it is just leaking ever so slightly. He said, it's only a minor leak. It's something that people can live with. throughout their whole lives and not even know they have until later on in life. And as he's explaining all this, like, the only thought process is like, can I still play football? And it was passed to the fact of saying, look, it's something we need to keep an eye on, but we will carry on and we will monitor you in training, but everything should be okay. You won't need an operation for 60 years. So I just went back out into training, not really thinking much of it. And then in those days, the heart rate monitors were starting to come into training where you could monitor all of this. So my heart rate was getting monitored. And after a training session, I remember the fitness coach spoke to me and the physio and said, my max heart rate on that day was, I think, 227 or 223. And the average was 203, which I think after having that scan, they put 2 and 2 together. Whereas before they probably would have just thought, as they said to me, that I was just working extra hard. I was just working harder than everybody else. So they put 2 and 2 together and they went and they put it forward towards a specialist. So then that specialist came, and as he read all the information, he sent me for an MRI scan. So in the meantime, I'm phoning home to my dad, telling him everything, but not really telling me mum anything, because obviously as a Irish mum, she didn't even want me to leave the house. So it was one of them things that I didn't really want to worry her too much. So I went for the MRI scan, and after the scan, we stood there with the physio and they explained and said, Mark, look, your valve is leaking on a scale of 1 to 10. They said 1 being minor and 10 being at its worst. They said a 7 or an 8. So then all of a sudden alarm bells start ringing, where we started to think, right, something isn't quite right here. So then they gained that information and put it towards another specialist. So in this time, I'm kind of doing little bits of training, but not a lot. So they were still trying to figure all this out. So again, after I went to another specialist, they seen the scan results and they said, Mark, look, you probably won't need an operation for another 20, 30 years. Football will be long gone. So that's all I had in my mind was I can still play. Everything's fine. But he said, we will send this information off to a surgeon just to get a real professional opinion on what he feels, someone who deals with this on a daily basis, and see what he comes back with. So then is when I found me parents again to let them know everything that was going on. And then a meeting got made with the surgeon from Glenfield Hospital in Leicester. So in that time, it got made with him. Me mum, me dad, and the Derby physio, we all turned up at the Glenfield Hospital. We were sitting in the office waiting, and the surgeon came in, and he put his diary on the desk, and he had a model heart in his hand, and he just looked at me and said, Mark, your heart is 3 times the size of what it should be for someone of your age, and if you don't have the operation done this year, you're going to die. And then it was that moment that it all felt so surreal, because it went from 60 years to 20, 30 years to then within a year. But when someone tells you at the age of 16 you have a year that you could die, like, I just didn't know how to take it. It was more like an out of body thing to think, you cannot be speaking to me. I just played a game last year in front of 23,000. This can't, like, you must be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So he explained what it was. He said, your valve is leaking. He said, and it's starting to leak quite badly. And he said, the only way I can describe it is, he said, if you have a balloon freshly out of a packet, he said, and you blow it up to its full capacity and let it go down, he said, it will never go back to normal size. And he said, you do that again, it goes bigger. And he said, it won't go back down to that last size. And he said, you keep doing that and keep doing that. He said, until the balloon pops. He said, and your valve and your heart, he said, it's just expanding. He said, until one day, he said, you'll wake up and walk up a flight of stairs. He said, you'll wake up and brush your teeth. And he said, your heart will stop.
I mean, I can't imagine as a 16-year-old what it's like to hear that news, especially when you're fulfilling your dream of being a professional footballer. I also feel like, I've got to add that thank goodness for those scans. Thank goodness for that you had that opportunity for this to be discovered. Actually, one of our close friends lost their brother when he was, I think, 14 years old, just collapsed playing tennis. And his mum now works tirelessly for a group called CRY, Cardiac Risk in the Young. And doing exactly that, just taking scanning machines to football clubs, to wherever she can, so that they have these regular scans to pick up any problems. So amazing that it was discovered, but of course devastating for you in that moment. How, as a 16-year-old, do you handle that? I mean, what support was around you from the club? Obviously, you've got your family and your parents, but in the face of that sort of adversity, resilience obviously plays a massive part. And was it the desire just to play football again that you said, right, okay, I've got to do whatever it takes to fix this? Or what was the journey there for you?
Well, it started off was he told me the procedures that could be had. He told me that, Mark, you'd be lucky to play down the park with your friends, let alone get back playing professionally. So it was almost telling me that my professional career was over. And that was the news that probably hurt me more, rather than the news of saying that I could die within a year.
Yeah.
And I think being 16 and naive, I kind of held on to that idea of, right, I just want to play football. So when I asked him what are the procedures and what's my best chance of playing? So we went through a metallic valve, which meant you're on blood thinners and you can't play contact sport. He said there was a Ross operation where they swap your lung valve and your aortic valve around, where it's all still your same tissue, but later down the line, you're going to need an operation on your lung valve. He said, we can use a pigskin valve, a prosthetic valve, which means, he said, it could last a year to a maximum of 5 years. But he said, there's no guarantee on the time frame that you'll get. But he said, even after the operations, he said, you probably still won't get back to the level of fitness a professional footballer needs. But once I heard that there was that slight opportunity of playing football with a prosthetic valve, I just said, yes, I'll have that one. And it was at that moment that it was that small little glimmer, that small window of chance, that whether it was a year or 5 years that I was going to get, or whether it was ever again, I just held on to it. And I went in for the operation, and the operation was 6 hours long. And I had that in the October of 2009. And the support I had from Derby as a club, which is why I say Nigel Clough as a manager and as a person, was someone who was massive for me, because not only did he give me the opportunity at 16, but once I got told I needed open heart surgery, I got given a new 3.5-year contract to give me the opportunity to get back fit. Because after making me debut and doing really well, he believed in something in me. And then I flew home in the October till the January. But every single day or most weekends, he's phoning me parents to make sure I'm doing the walk and I'm supposed to be doing. He's phoning me, asking me, am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? How do I feel? Is everything going okay? And he's still managing the championship team. But on the side, like you say, those little small gestures of making someone feel important as a 16-year-old when you're manager of a championship team, it went a long way, and it made me want that little bit more to get back playing for him. So by the time January came around, as I say, the support from my family, like the only thing I can kind of recall on a lot of it is there was never one person telling me I'd never play again. There was always people saying, Mark, when you get back, and Mark, you will get back. And that time when you get back, this will all be worth it. And Mark, when you get back on that pitch, you know what? It's going to be the best day ever. Like, there was never anybody saying to me, Mark, it might never happen. It was only the doctor that I heard that from. So once I come away from the hospital, it was almost like everything was geared towards, right, Mark, however long it will take, we will get you back. And however long it will take. And again, Derby as a club, from the physiotherapist to the fitness coach, everybody, it was all brand new to them. They're used to rehabbing knees, hamstrings, calves. How do you rehab a heart? And that was something that was all guesswork, where the fitness coach took it upon himself to go, right, well, if I'm treating you as an unfit person, how do I get that person fit? So we just went out and done slow jogs in the snow. When it was snowing, we just done light jogs by ourselves. And it was always on a watch from my heart rate, where it would get to a certain level, right, we'll walk until it goes back down. And I'll just keep doing that. And it was like starting from ground zero again. But I felt in myself doing all that running and seeing the lads training on a pitch was affecting me a little bit more than I thought, because I was looking at their fitness levels to mine and thinking, I'll never get back to that. How am I meant to get back? I feel terrible every time I jog. But it was when I went into the kind of single-minded mentality, when I had to go back to the hospital, and they done a fitness test with me. So they walked me on a treadmill and they check me heart rate. They walk me on a treadmill for 20 minutes and check me heart rate. Like, Mark, you're absolutely flying through this. You're streets ahead of where you should be. And straight away, it was almost like, right, me trying to compare myself to somebody else's journey, which they are over on a football field. They didn't have to deal with what I dealt with. So I have to just single-handedly look at it from my own fitness and say, I'm doing well for me. And once I started to like look at that, then once I heard that news from the hospital, I just ended up going, right, I'm on the right track. Everything's ahead of schedule. I am absolutely flying with this. And it was once everything then started to slowly progress, I got myself back playing. My first game, I got myself back playing. It was around the end of March time for the under-18s against Manchester United. And I was on MUTV, which meant my family at home got to watch it. And my dad watching it for the first time and my mum watching. And they said they were probably more nervous than I was because they wanted to see, is Mark going to be the same Mark again? And the first ball that came to me, I throw myself in front of it. It hits my chest. It's hitting my head. It's going everywhere. And my mum said, my dad just sat back and said, well, I know he's going to be okay. Mark's back. Because I just had no fear factor in me.
And do you think
that?
Sorry, carry on.
No, and it was that moment of not having that fear factor that I realized just focusing on my own self through all of that. And as well as looking at the whole point of it, thinking, do you know what? Well, as much as I wanted to be playing in the first team and looking so far ahead, the fact I was back on a field was my everything. And I didn't care where it was or what it was. And football played a massive distraction in all of that.
There's a message there, isn't there? Because we spend a lot of time worrying about everyone else and what they're doing and how they're achieving and what life looks like for them. And sometimes we just need to focus on where we're at and, improve what we can about ourselves and work hard as an individual rather than feel that worry comparing ourselves to others. But also, you just mentioned there was no fear factor. Do you think as a 16-year-old, I know not every 16-year-old's the same, but that sort of no fear factor and that, that drive and that innocence in a way to get back on that football pitch meant that actually you didn't have as many downtimes as you possibly might have done. It's such a long journey when you're looking ahead thinking I've got to play professional football again, but you've just had a major heart surgery. Did you think, were there ever moments where you went, this is never going to happen?
The only moments that I thought it was never going to happen was the moments of when I would jog next to seeing the lads training over on a far field. That was the only time that I ever felt myself thinking, I'll never get back to that fitness. I'm never going to be able to do that again. But again, it's that there was like that single-handed mentality of just looking at the aspect of going, I want to just get back, whether it was to training fitness, whether it was playing fitness. Once I was back playing, that was all that mattered to me. And I think even in those moments, regardless of whether I had a doctor who told me it might be a year to a maximum of 5 years, it was the fact that if I fell down along the way, physio would just say to me, Mark, we'll go again tomorrow. And we'll go again tomorrow. And like you say, being 16, and I call it being 16 and just naive to the whole situation, that there wasn't that fear factor. Like I was still listening to everybody around me, and you're still 16, you're still a child. So you are going to still be molded by people around you. And because I had such positive people around me, it almost never let me self-doubt, and never let me doubt anything. The only time that I doubted was when I seen it for myself. But everybody else would go, Mark, we'll go again. Mark, everything's amazing. Look, we'll go again. And once that got drilled into me, I think the operation at 16 set me up for so much in life that I never thought it was ready to set me up for. So even when I look back at it now, as traumatic as it was, I'm so thankful for it, because through my career, I was always able to bounce back off the opportunity of saying, well, if I can make it back from this, nothing's going to stop me. And that was the mentality I took towards it, was literally, because I can get back from open heart surgery, whatever happens to me along the way in life, there's going to be nothing that stands in my way. And that was the whole process behind it all. So I'm actually thankful for it.
and that power of positive reinforcement as well from everyone around you. You know, if we deal with negatives, then you're never going to find a way through a difficult situation. So, so you just mentioned, obviously, you made it back. You went. How long was it before you played for the Derby first team again?
That at the end of that season, I got back training with the first team. It was just the last week of April, and I made the first team bench on the last day of the season. So I got back training and playing with them probably by the end of April, once they got me back on the field. And then it was the following season after that. I made a couple of appearances. So within the space of 7 months, I was back playing and training with a first team, which again, it goes back to that whole 16 and naive moment. There was nothing in my way when everybody's telling me everything's going to be okay. And that one foot after the other, I got it back.
And you suffered a number of injuries throughout your career. You touched on that then. I think it was an ACL at one point, and long difficult injuries. And how did you really feel, well, each time I can get back from this because of what I've been through, or was there another sort of mindset journey that you had to go on to try and keep striving and keep working to get back to full fitness?
It was always a mindset journey through it all, and they were always the first initial thing of the injuries was always, oh, not again. This can't be happening to me again. Like, when is this going to stop? Like, you fall into that first bit of feeling it. Like, and I started to realize, like, the first moment of feeling it is something that happened every single time I had a setback. Was always, you feel the world is against you and you feel everything is falling down on you. But again, being out, like, after having that open heart surgery at 16, I never realized how much I relied on it, because once I had the ACL, it was almost, right, well, I know I've got the strength to get back from this, and I know I've got the strength to get back from the next thing. The only really reason why I felt injuries, apart from the open heart surgery, why injuries really affected me probably that little bit more, was because I knew my career was on a timescale. So every single season that I would play, I'd have a routine heart scan to see if I'm allowed to play the next year. So when the doctor told me a year to a maximum of 5, every single season was almost like, right, go back and get scanned, see if everything's okay. If it is okay, we go again. And because if I get an injury in between that to disrupt it, is when it would affect me a little bit more, thinking, this can't be happening. Like, my career could be finished now, like, because my heart could leak next year, and this could be, and I'd work myself up so much until you separate it all and just go, well, look, I've got back from open heart surgery, I'll get back from this. And it was something, and it sounds so simple, but I always looked at it and not looked at the extent of the injury or the length of the injury. I just looked at it and said, at some point, I will get back playing. Whether it is going to take the full 10 months of an ACL, whether it went up to 12 months or whether it was 6. Once I set my mind to, I was saying, at some stage, I'm going to do everything correctly and I will get back. So I never looked and worried myself about the length of it.
And you did exactly that. I mean, you played for Derby, you played for Motherwell, you played for Luton, and you were captain at Newport County. And I was watching the footage earlier of your goal, which kept Newport in the Football League. So you've had some, amazing moments. Just going to you as a captain, I'd just love to, what did you learn along the way from others? How did you then lead as a captain, and how did you communicate? And were there situations where, there was difficult messaging that you had to give to other players, to younger players, to people around you? What was your style, I suppose, as a leader?
I think my style as a leader was always, I enjoyed helping people. Like, I enjoyed helping. So whether that was playing alongside somebody, and sometimes it never came out in the right way when you're in the middle of competition. So you are going to be a little bit harder on people. But I was brought up in the environment of, if I'm constantly talking to you and constantly trying to come after you or saying a lot more to you, is because I know you're capable of more. It's when I don't want to speak to you, or I don't want to be part of any of that, is when, do you know what, there's no hope for you. In that kind of way that I was treated by Nigel Cloughs and Robbie Savages and people like that through my career. And But when I was a captain of Newport, it was almost like in a change room, you wanted to be the person that's going to put a smile on someone's face. You wanted to be someone that's going to, but once you cross the white line, this is our job now. This is my job. This is your job. And you're not going to make my job look bad, and I'm not going to make your job look bad. So we're going to lead each other. It was almost like a collective, because I remember the team that I played in, any one of our 11 could have been a captain. And the fact that I got to lead that was a massive, proud moment for me to have the armband. But at the same time, whether I had an armband or not, I was always still the same person, where lead by example, lead by voice, and lead by the fact of trying to help people on and off the field. And that was something where when we had Ben White in as a player on loan from Brighton, it was somebody that came in and took my position. And this was before I was captain, came in and took my position. But you know what? I wanted to keep him on his toes. I wanted to help him, but I wanted to train really well behind him because I knew that would make him better. And I wanted to keep pushing him because I knew that would make him better. And that's the kind of help that I wanted to give. And then if I was playing alongside him, you try and talk him through it. So it was the same thing that happened to me when I made my debut. I remember I came on next to Rob Holtz, who was a striker at the time. But the first thing he said to me when I came onto the pitch was, Mark, you're the defender out of two of us. You tell me what to do. And for an older, experienced pro to a 16-year-old and him giving me the confidence to tell him what to do, it was almost like I took that on, that any young centre-back that I ever played alongside, I would always say to them, look, I'm going to tell you to be here and do that, but you tell me what to do. If I do something wrong, you better tell me. Which then gives them that little bit of a responsibility and almost gives them the opportunity to go, I don't see him as a senior pro, I'm his teammate now. So even though I'm younger than him, I'm going to tell him what to do. So I took a lot on through my career of all little snippets of things that I felt helped me. But again, was just gaining individual relationships with people, not just as a collective, but you almost understood all your teammates. You understood every single person and you got along with people more than you did with others. But when you were out on that field, it was 11 men that were willing to go to war and fight with each other. And that, to me, being part of that and being a leader of that is what I felt as though what gave us more success than it did downtime.
I mean, what you're talking about there is this sort of man management and learning individuals and sort of the styles that each one needed. Did you feel that you had to have a different approach with a different player? Did you know, well, he needs this or he needs that, and I need to be careful how I talk to such and such?
Yeah, and I think like that was something where you just pick that up as you go along. Like where I was at Newport, we were a lot of individuals in that team that all come from different backgrounds of injuries, managers saying they're not good enough. So I used to always call us, we were the perfect mixture of misfits, but we all came together as a team. So everybody was an individual. Some people would have a bit of an attitude problem. Other people wouldn't know how to understand or wouldn't be able to take a bit of, let's say, if you want to call it a laugh and a joke at their expense. Like you almost had to then individualize it. But then once we came together as a group, we were the perfect mix because we had everything that you needed for that recipe of success or somewhat of a success that we had at Newport. But having that individual thing to each player, where when I was a young player, you almost had to kind of show them the way and show them the ropes. And there used to be a player that I trained with and I kicked him that little bit more. And he used to think I hated him. But I told him, if you're able to take kicks in training, when it comes to games, you'll just jump straight back up and it won't even like phase you. But I said, if people had to take it easy on you in training, I said, and once it comes to a game, I said, you're going to go wide. And I said, so it's not that I hate you. I said, it might be a bit of a crazy approach. But I said, it's not that I hate you. I said, because I believe you can take it. But I just think when it happens in games, you go hiding. So if you get used to it in training and getting it from me, just know if somebody kicks you on a pitch, I'll be the first one over to try and help. I'll be the first one over to pick you back up. But that approach with him potentially worked a little bit more, and we're still like good friends to this day. And then there's other people where it would be a lot more variable between the two of us, where it was me and the centre-back, probably the best centre-back that I played alongside, and Mickey Demetrio, where me and him kind of complemented each other. I was always like the really loud one, and I never wanted to let him slip up, or if he missed a header, I'm not doing that again. But then when he would start having a go back at me, we were almost like right, we're both switched on now. We're both in this now. And he was someone that I lived with off the field. So, like you say, I think football gets lost sometimes of realizing that it's a game of individuals. And if you're able to tap into that individual side of it, you can build whatever environment you want around that, rather than just thinking everybody has to think exactly the same way. It's almost like it's impossible because we're all individuals. So you're not going to get everybody on the same page. But if the environment is right for all those individuals, well, then it's the perfect environment, like you say, for them to express themselves in their own way, but in the right way.
And you mentioned then this group of misfits and people who've been, suffered injuries or told they're not good enough. Obviously, we're aware of your injuries, but were you told you weren't good enough? Is that something you'd heard from coaches or managers along your journey?
Yeah, I got told off one or two coaches when I was younger that I wasn't tall enough to be a centre back, that I wasn't quite good enough to play over in England. And I think when you get told you're not tall enough for a certain team, you're almost looking at yourself thinking, well, I can't stretch myself. I can't grow anymore. Like what more am I supposed to do? Oh, well, then I just think you need to change your position. And I always felt as though I was a good defender. So I was thinking, why would I have to change my position just because of the height that I am? And then I've had managers who told me certain things of, again, I got left out of the team at Motherwell because I got told a player has more presence than me. And I never understood what more presence is, because I questioned them on, does he do this? Does he do that? Do I do this? Do I do that? And with all of those things, it was like, yeah, you both do exactly the same thing, but he is just more present. And I was like, well, where do I stand with that? I said, I can't change that. So it was almost like realizing that even though there are going to be certain opinions around football, I just started to understand a lot that football is a massive game of opinions. And it's just that you have to find the right one that's willing to suit you. And it's not taking that forced opinion as, right, now my football career is finished. Because I realised that, especially when I was at Luton Town, when a manager left me out of the team and left me out of the squad and took my squad number and everything, that I was in those moments that it would have been easy for me to pick up, go home, go back to Ireland, and that's me done with football. But I started to realise that this is one person's opinion in 1,000 opinions that I'm unaware of at the moment. So I just had to start exhausting all of the different avenues to then get the right one that suited me. And thankfully, that is something that I went and found, and Newport became like another home from home, like Derby was.
So after this, the ups and downs, the turbulence of your career, I think it was it around 2020 when you finally had to retire for good? And just talk me through how that came about and the emotions that came with that.
Yeah, so the season came to a stop. I think it was around October time, November time. Oh no, it was just after January 2020. And then COVID came about. And then when COVID came about, it was more of the fact of nobody knew what it was. So the football had to take a bit of a stop. And then when football took a stop, we all got given individual training programs and different things to stay fit, because we got told at the beginning, football is taking a break for 3 weeks until we figure out what's going on. And then potentially it'll resume. So we all got given individual stuff. So I'm going out cycling most days and going out and lifting some weights that I've got in my apartment and just trying to keep myself ticking over, really. But in the meantime, the more I went cycling, the more that I was doing. There was one evening that I was sitting on my sofa, and in that evening, I remember I just got this proper overwhelming feeling, and then I just got a massive thump in my chest. And the thump that I got, I could feel my neck was pulsing, my palms were clammy, I could feel myself sweating, and my heart was racing, and I didn't know what has just happened. So I was with my ex-partner now, but my partner at the time, and I was saying I can't breathe. Like I was getting like a really feeling of like I cannot breathe. And we were going to phone an ambulance, but we never. And I just said, look, I'll just sleep it off. Just give me some water, I'll be fine. So I went to sleep that night, but I laid on my left-hand side and I kept getting that same thump and I couldn't lay on my left-hand side. So I'd lay on my back. So the next day I found the club doctor and I tell him, look, me heart, I'm getting palpitations. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I said, like, something isn't right. I said, just something feels off. And it's just a feeling that when everybody feels something isn't quite right, you just know. And I think that's the feeling I was feeling. And when I'm on the phone to him, he was like, Mark, it's probably nothing. It's probably an ectopic beat. Everybody gets it where your heart skips a rhythm and you cough and get it back into rhythm again. And I was just like, right, that's fine. So I was still going out cycling most days and I'm still going out cycling doing long distance. And even doing that, I could still feel the palpitations in my chest where it would flutter every so often and I'd just get the palpitations again. So then I'm phoning the doctor going, Doc, something isn't quite right. And I'm doing these exercises and in the meantime, I feel myself getting more and more tired. I feel myself getting more fatigued. I can feel myself getting more anxious about something that isn't just quite right. And I was getting more frustrated with myself thinking if football is to start tomorrow, they're going to think I've done absolutely nothing with my time off. Like I've tried to keep fit and now I'm feeling more tired. Like this isn't going to look good. So the doctor, obviously with it being COVID, it was difficult to get in hospitals. So we ended up making it to, he got me a scan in Cardiff Hospital and I went down and had me heart scan. I had me echo again, got pulled into the room with the doctor and he just looked at me and said, Mark, your valve is leaking. And he said, it's leaking very badly. And it was just in that moment, and I'll never forget it, where he sat in front of me and I just put my head into my hands and I just started to cry. There was not anything in this world that affected me more than when he told me that, because I always made a promise to myself and even to my family that I was having always one open heart surgery for me football and the next open heart surgery was for the rest of my life. So whenever that was, whether it was a year to a maximum of 5 years, or lucky enough that I got 11 years out of this valve, that whenever the next heart surgery was, my career's coming to a finish. So when he told me that, I knew my career's finished. And and I was in that time that I just couldn't help but cry. And I remember the doctor saying to me, but Mark, there's other procedures we can potentially do to keep you playing. I said, but you're not understanding me. I said at the age of 16 that this is not going to be me. I said, I want one for this and one for the rest of my life. So he kind of sat there and said, he's sorry to hear that. And I went out to the car to my ex-partner and I just burst into tears again. I got straight on the phone to my mum. I said, Mum, my valve is leaking again. And she said, say no more. She got a flight the next day. And it was in the time that she was over, we were waiting on an appointment in the Glenfield Hospital. And in that one evening, I was sitting on the sofa that's just behind me and I had to open up my doors. I could feel myself getting that same overwhelming feeling. I could feel myself getting that same like hotness and clamminess and everything. And my mum was sitting on the sofa and she said, is everything okay? And I said, Ma, I said, I'm getting dizzy. So I remember she just grabbed me hands and she said to me, Mark, just keep your head down and just keep breathing. And it was the only moment that I ever felt this could be it. That probably was the only moment that I thought, and I think my mum believes it as well, because she was holding my hands and she's praying for everything to be okay. And that in itself was something that was probably breaking me, to think I'm putting my family through this. And I know it's not my fault. And I know it's not a thought that I should be having, but I'm thinking, why is this happening? Like, I'm putting my family through so much stress here and I shouldn't be. And we found an ambulance, found out I was having a panic attack. I got admitted into the hospital up in Glenfield a few weeks later. And they told me the night before my operation, they thought I had an infection in my valve. And I was laying in the bed and the doctor came in to me and said, look, Mark, he said, we think you have an infection, but he said, if you don't have the infection, you're having the operation tomorrow. But if there is an infection, we can't operate until the infection leaves. So he explained what was going wrong. I got moved onto the main ward, and he explained to me saying, Mark, look, he said, your valve, he said, is hanging on by a thread. And he said, if that valve breaks off through the night, he said, and circulates your body and gets lodged in your brain, he said, you're dead. He said, and that's why you're on the main ward right now, because we need to keep a really close eye on you. He said, because we had that patient in here 2 weeks ago that happened to, and he's no longer with us. And it was all these things that were being said that I was on the phone again to my mum. And obviously, I didn't know the hospital phoned my mum and told her this. And I was on the phone to my mum. She's telling me, Mark, everything's going to be okay. I'm explaining to my mum how everything's going to be okay. But we never spoke about what the doctor has just told both of us. It was all just, Mark, you're going to be okay. You'll have the operation tomorrow. Everything's going to be fine. And I remember I just sat up all the night thinking, I don't want to go to sleep. I'm too afraid to sleep because what if I don't wake up? And I must have passed out sleeping for 20 minutes. And then I got woken up the next morning. And the doctor came in and said, Mark, look, there's no infection. You can have the operation. And when I tell you, when people say you can have weight on your shoulders, I felt like I was floating around the room. Like I could have got up and I could have kissed him there and then, and I wouldn't have cared. I just shook his hand. I burst into tears and I got wheeled down. I had the operation, which was 7 hours long. I got the metallic valve put in, and that was where probably more struggle came, but away from football struggle. But at that moment, that perspective change of getting told I can have the operation went from an operation I didn't want to have because I know what the implications are. I'm 27. I'm not 16 and naive. So I understand everything that's going on. But on the flip side of all of that, once I heard that I was probably nearly 24 hours of dying, it changed my perspective to think, no, this operation is here to save my life. I need to have this. I cannot wait to have it. Like, I want to live. And that moment in itself went from not wanting something with a small change of perspective, made the operation seem like it was going to be simple. And that brought so much to me afterwards now that my perspectives on so many different things is just beyond this world. And I'll always say it now that the 2 open heart surgeries, as traumatic as they are, I'm so thankful for both of them.
Well, you've written a book, A Game of Two Hearts, which is a great title, and obviously it is exactly that. Both those surgeries were massive parts of your life and your journey. But from a 16-year-old breaking through to the first team of Derby County to a 27-year-old being told, obviously, as you just said, the relief of being alive and the importance of that is one thing. But you've been quite open about your struggle and in that transition into retirement, and you mentioned a panic attack there, and I think I'm right in saying there was some depression and anxiety that followed that. I mean, how talk me through that a little bit, and how did you manage to cope with that, and how have you found your way through?
At the beginning, I really struggled within the first year because I never thought I could go back to football because it's been taken away from me. So I was in that, almost, you want to call it a victim mentality of thinking football has been taken away from me. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. As well as that, I was contemplating if I'm going to move back to Ireland. I was so much going on, and COVID was still around. So we were all still in lockdown, going through an open heart surgery recovery. Football wasn't there. And then I've just retired from football, and obviously stuff with my ex-partner wasn't really going so well due to everything that was going on. And there was just a lot happening all at once. And I remember I just couldn't cipher it out. I just couldn't separate it all. Like, everything just felt like one big dark cloud. And I didn't want to get out of bed, but also I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to leave the apartment because if I get COVID, I had a chance of, I'm not going to make it. Like, there was just so many things. And when football started back, I began going into training, and that was just to kind of go in and give myself a bit of a routine. And in that routine it gave me something to get up out of bed for. Now, these are all things that at that time, I just thought, I'm going back into football, I'm doing what I love, and I'm going to get back in. And I think it was more the fact of going in every day, I look at it now going, just gave me that reason to get up and go. Because if not, there was days where I was laying in bed, I didn't want to get out, but I'd be on the phone to a cardiac rehab and they'd be doing like the score pointing system on how I'm feeling and all these different things. And they would just tell me, Mark, you are depressed. And I was like, I'm not depressed. I've just had open heart surgery. That's why I'm not moving. That's why I'm not walking. I've just had open heart surgery. And they were like, no, because you have the capabilities of getting out of bed. You have the capabilities. When was the last time you had a shower? When was the last time you took care of your appearance? When was the last time for any of these things? And I said, probably a few weeks. And it's only when you speak about it, you start realizing, thinking, I've let this slip. But you don't realize you're in anything, because I was just playing the whole thing of, it's the open heart surgery. That's the reason for all this. And the retirement from football, that's the reason for all this. It's got nothing to do with depression. Like, I'm not sad. Like, I'm not. Again, when people think of depression, they think of the 0 to 100. I must be thinking really, really terrible thoughts to be depressed. But I'm not. So I'm not depressed. And then when I went back into football, the club doctor, who, like, again, was someone who was so, so good to me, he spoke to me and said, Mark, I think you need to do counselling. And I said, I don't need counselling. I said, I'm fine. I said, I don't have anything going on in my mind. I said, I'm okay. He said, no, Mark. He said, it's just for somebody to talk to. He said, because he said, how you are right now and how things are happening. He said, yeah, he said, as a doctor, he said, I could easily give you a tablet. He said, but I want you to exhaust all avenues before you want to just take that route. And I was like, right, okay. And at that time, I remember there was nights I was laying in bed and I'm phoning some of my teammates at the time at 1 o'clock in the morning to come around and collect me because I'm shaking and shivering in bed. Like, I'm bursting into tears in front of one of my really close friends in football. Well, not in football, in life now. But Matty Dolan was somebody who was there through nearly the majority of it. Like, what I would call a really genuine friend, that no matter what time I'd call him or his fiance would just come to the door, take me over to their house, and I would sit and talk with them. I just burst into tears, and I've never cried in front of anybody, and I would never cry out of anything other than thinking, they can't see me like this. And I remember there was a moment that I was sitting with them speaking, and the more that I spoke, I just said, this can't be me for the rest of my life, is it? Like, is this me? Like, I was starting to convince myself that I don't know a way out of this, because I was having panic attacks. I was getting admitted into hospital and convinced my heart isn't working properly, and getting told by the hospital, Mark, it's panic attacks. And I said, but how can your head make you feel like this? Whereas these are all the symptoms of what I had when I did have a problem with my heart, but now I have all the same symptoms and I don't have a problem with my heart. How is this happening? Like, my mind cannot be playing these tricks. And he said, but this is the whole reason, Mark, for you're meant to practice these things when you feel okay. So then by the time you don't feel okay, you can handle it a lot better. And I just never understood it. And then when I started to do counselling was something that made me realize and got me comfortable with speaking. It made me realize a lot about everything that I was going through, because the very first session, I'll always remember that when the counsellor spoke to me, all she said was, Mark, tell me like a little bit about your surgery. Tell me like why you think you're here. And I said, well, in all fairness, I said I retired from football. I had open heart surgery, and I said, sorry for my voice being so croaky. I said, the other day, last year, I said I had a ventilator down there and they clipped the vocal, and I just spoke about it so freely. And she stopped me all the way through it and just said, Mark, do you realise what you're speaking about? I said, I'm just telling you my surgery. She said, but you're talking about it like you've just had a tooth out. She said, you have normalised the extreme. And she said, the fact of the matter is, you've not only just had one of these open heart surgeries, you've had two. Some people will never have one. Like, it's a traumatic enough experience having one of them, and your body is trying to deal with two of them. And you're just speaking about it like you should be okay. You have to start giving yourself and stop being hard on yourself. And that was when I understood the term. And so many people used to say, Mark, stop being hard on yourself. Mark, you're too hard on yourself. And I just think, no, I'm not. And now I start to understand, going, that's what it means. It's the fact of not giving myself that little bit of leeway, not being a bit nicer to myself, say, Mark, it's all right that you don't feel quite right, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to put on a brave face. And it was all in those times that everything was just like slowly getting taken apart. That dark cloud, I could start seeing all the different elements in it, and I could start separating the retirement and the relationship and football and COVID and the open heart. So I was able to start separating it because I could start understanding of going, right, well, right, maybe I am hard on myself. So do you know what? I'm going to leave two things to the side. I'll deal with the retirement first. And then I started to put a positive spin on so many things. That the retirement was, I remember two lads reached out to me that when I'd done speaking with them, they reached out to me, and one of them was a retired footballer and one's a retired golfer. And they set up a WhatsApp group and they said, Mark, we know that you need just that little bit of structure back. You need that little bit of something to be accountable for, like you were with your football. And they done it all in football terms because they understood it. Now, a counsellor didn't understand that for me. And a counsellor could tell me the feelings behind it, but not actually understand leaving football and your whole passion and your life. Like, football was my life, all of that gone. So when I had these two lads speaking to me and telling me the feelings I am feeling without me having to speak, I was like, you get it. You just understand it. And it was when I would finish speaking to them, I'd come outside and my man would look at me and go, Mark, you've got the spark back. I can see it in your eyes. You've got a bit of life in you. Because I was speaking to people that I was like, yeah, they're doing okay. I know I'm going to be okay. Almost seeing them as the example to say they know what it was like. So like, now that they've got over and they've got past it, I know I can do it. And it was all of those things that I was just taking little bits out of as I was going along. And I was able to start piecing so much of my life, the good and the bad. But it was when I went on the speaking course with Leon and Paul that allowed me to put my life on in a time scale and look at the good and the bad and the good and the bad and pick it apart and know all of everything that has happened, all the different events that have happened in my life. And when I'd actually done that, it almost like changed my life because I was able to look at all these different things and go, my life looks like one big story that I never really understood it like that. But if that never happened, I wouldn't have made it to there. And if I never made it to there, I wouldn't have met this person and this person wouldn't have put me. And it was so crazy once I started seeing my life like that as a story that the open heart surgery started to calm that a little bit more in me to go, well, Mark, this is just part of the story, but you're okay now. Mark, this is just part of your story.
And it's, you mentioned that's where we met, obviously, when we worked with you a little bit on your performance and presentation and on your keynote. And you made a comment a minute ago about how you were telling the therapist sort of quite in blasé terms about what you'd been through. And I remember we said the same thing to you, that when you were talking about it, it was because it's so normal to you, but to everyone who hears that, the story that you've so eloquently said today, it's remarkable. And, we wanted you to be able to deliver that story as you described there, with the passion, with the energy, with the detail that it deserves. And how important now is it for you to be telling this story? I mean, I assume more and more you are speaking, you are doing more keynotes, you are letting people in sort of situations like this as well, telling your story in order to help others.
Yeah, it's important for me because it puts a purpose back to my life again. Like the purpose that I had with football, it's almost like, right, well, I look at the whole situations that have happened in my life going, well, I've had all these things that have happened, from the 2 open heart surgeries, depressions, anxiety, PTSD. I've had all these things, but it's all for the reason of going, right, the bigger picture could be to help somebody. The bigger picture is to become comfortable speaking about it. The bigger picture is to speak about it. So now that I have the opportunities on certain levels of things, and I'm willing to speak to anybody about it, because I just feel as though there's so many people out there in their lives that will struggle with so many things that don't all have platforms. And where even though I might have a small-ish platform for what it is right now, me speaking about the story or the book that I've done about my life, it's all just so important that I want to be that example to what people were for me. I want to be the example of going, but look, if you want a career in something, or if you just want a normal life, or if you just want to have a smile on your face every single day, everything that you do will all be a choice that you make. And I see everything as one big choice, is the fact of going, right, I've had all these things happen to me. And yeah, I did have the victim mentality at the beginning of all of them, but I made the choice of wanting to see the silver lining and everything. I didn't get born with that like feeling of that. I had to make the choice of doing it. I had to make the choice of keep believing. And those choices is what I believe being spoken about will just keep the fire lit in somebody else who might hear it, to make them think, well, do you know what? I might just make that small choice. And I don't speak of it out of something that is only happened yesterday. Like, this is 4 years worth of me thinking that way and seeing things that way. And that is why when people go, Mark, you're such a positive person, I go, well, yeah, because I choose to be. Like, I'm not just somebody that, okay, I was born a positive person, I'm going to carry on being it. It's like life has tried to test me in loads of different ways, but I've seen the silver lining in it all. For to retire at 27 seems as though I retired as a young footballer, but I retired 11 years more than any doctor gave me at 16. So it's a positive. All of a sudden, I retired from football at 27. Well, I look at it and go, it gave me a head start at a retirement that was inevitable in any way. And I went through depression and I went through anxieties, and don't get me wrong, there was so many people helping me around that just kept me ticking along. But it was almost the turning point was speaking about it, realizing that I'm not the only one feeling that, and realizing that there are thousands of people out there that have felt exactly the same thing. Now, the part that I always used to hold on to was nobody will understand open heart surgery. And I said, that's the small part of the emotion. That's the big part. And the emotion is what you need to talk about, not the situation. Because I think people lock away the emotion on the basis of, well, I can't really tell Mark I was depressed because he had open heart surgery, so I can't speak about it. I only broke my arm. And I'd say, well, right, breaking your arm, open heart surgery, two different things. But the emotion that we both felt, we can both sit and speak about. So get speaking about that, and you start realizing, actually, do you know what? People do understand that and people do get it. And that is the example that I'm trying to set, is that those ways of thinking are choices to make. And if you make that choice to do it, well, then all of a sudden you're giving yourself the best opportunity to not give up.
And now you are working as player welfare at Newport. And, after everything I've heard, I can't think of anyone more qualified to be doing that job. And how are you finding that role? What are you able to deliver to the players, and particularly the young players? What messages, what lessons are you trying to give them to sort of help and guide them through what is similarly to acting as well, a very precarious industry, which the majority of people don't make it, as opposed to those that do make it that we hear about.
Yeah, it's a very cutthroat industry, and it's almost like when you get given younger players to a senior environment that might be their first time going out on loan to a first team, or it might be they've come up through Newport's academy. It's almost like you try and show them the do's and don'ts. You make them feel as comfortable as quick as you can by engaging with them. And what I enjoy doing, again, goes back to what I was like as a captain. I like getting an individual relationship with that person to see what they are, to see how they are, to see how they react in situations. And it's not every day speak to everybody and pull them into an office and say, right, how are you feeling today? It's sometimes sitting back and go, okay, you've played well now for 3 games. I want to see if you get carried away with yourself, and I might just have to pull you back down a little bit. Then all of a sudden, if they are getting stomped on and the manager's not playing them and something's not going quite right, I want to see how you react to that. Are you going to sulk? Are you going to try your toys out of pram and be a bad person? Or are you going to be someone that is going to just say, do you know what? I'm going to prove him wrong. I'm going to put me one foot in front of the other and fight. And sometimes you get the people that will do that without even needing to kind of nudge them in that direction. But being able to try and teach them the resilience of going, regardless of what happens at this club, use it as a lesson or a life lesson to go, any club I go to, or any rejection that I get, or anything that happens, do you know what? I'm going to prove him wrong. I said, start gaining that mentality of I'm going to prove somebody wrong. I said, because that proving somebody wrong is going to keep that fire lit inside you. And I said, when all your cards are down and you think you're training really well, oh my God, I'm going to be in the team this week, and then it doesn't happen. Well, then you know what? You dust yourself down and say, I'm going to go again. I said, because I said, like myself, as well as the younger lads there, I said, we've all started and we've all come into football because we love it. I said, keep that love close. I said, because it's the love that will take you through the tough times where you go, I'm doing this because I love it. I'm not doing this because of the exterior fame and all of these different things that can come with it. I'm doing it because I love it. So no matter what adversity comes to you through football, if you're doing it for the love of it, you'll overcome anything, because there won't be anything that can take that love away from you. And the difference of all that is that I love the role that I do be in, because when you see people, it's almost like a light bulb. You see it switch for them. You see that performance is getting that little bit better. They start understanding the competitive edge. They start understanding the fighting edge. They start understanding the meaning of things. They start fighting against the opinions that were going against them through their careers, and you start seeing them bringing that out in themselves. You almost then go, now you've got it. And then it's almost like you speak with them again and they see things differently to what they did probably 6 months previous. And that's what I enjoy the most, because I always believe when you treat somebody with the human element to what I said I was treated with, it makes you want to play for that team. It makes you want to play for that club. It makes you want to give your best to that place. And where you're the happiest, you'll play your best football. So why not try and make a player feel comfortable, happy and wanted to get the best football out of them, which then in hindsight is the best thing for the club. But I always look at it and go, regardless whether it's the best thing for the club, I just enjoy seeing somebody coming in with a smile on their face and not the weight of the world on their shoulders, because I know what that feels like in football, and I didn't have that guidance at a certain club that I was at to try and pick me out. I had to do it myself.
I think that's a message for sort of every industry. Everyone could take that on board and make sure they've got employees coming in happy and wanting to be there. I certainly know it's the case with my line of work as well. Mark, it's been fascinating talking to you and sort of hearing your journey, your life journey, and how you've taken these setbacks, these knocks, which would have really thrown a lot of people, and how you've turned it into a positive. And it's admirable. I need to ask, are you okay now? Are you fit and healthy? Is the ticker good?
Yeah, the ticker's good. The ticker's still ticking. That is something that I probably had to get used to over the last 4 years of hearing it clicking like a little clock. But yeah, everything's fine. I had a scan a few months back, and I don't have to go back for another year and a half now. They said that everything is working perfectly. So yeah, everything's going great and feeling fit and feeling good. So everything's going really good.
Great. And just, to leave us, is there one bit of, life advice or something that someone's said to you along the way, or something that you've learned along the way that you could leave us with, your one little nugget for us?
I'd say the one little bit of advice I think that I learned for myself, because I heard it through social media before, was something of the fact of, if there's a day that you ever feel like giving up, always think to yourself, just one more day. And on that next day could be the possible. But then if you don't feel right on the next day, keep saying to yourself, I'll give it one more day. Because it's always that belief of that one more day could make the difference. And you're probably only a day away from making that difference. So they're the things that I always just think, and positivity is a choice.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. It's been great chatting to you.
Cheers. Thank you.